All right, we're close.
How the computer played up a bit.
It did. I don't know what that one's doing,
Well,
but at least I have this one.
yeah,
So.
we can. You got it going.
All right. Oh, of course we're live, and I don't have it. Yeah, I feel like Guest Thursday is Maz and me looking like this for like 15 seconds.
Where are we? Yeah.
That's what's happening.
We never had this in the 70s.
Yeah, embarrassing. We've been doing this for like 11 weeks and we still don't get it right. Well, welcome to Guest Thursday. I am really, really delighted to have our good friend, Dr. Betsy Birmingham, joining us today, if only because this was an excuse for us to actually catch up. It's been far too long since we have even had the chance to do that, Betsy. So welcome to Daily Dose.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's great to see both of you, and it's wonderful to get a chance to catch up and, you know, to talk about fun stuff, especially on New Year's Eve, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Felt like I got the best day of the year.
You did, and you're splitting between our birthdays, so I feel like we're getting to talk about that as well. So it's all good. Betsy was my advisor in graduate school, and she and her partner Kevin were my my gosh, I've been out of graduate school so long. What's that called when you manage someone's paper?
We were like your supervisors. Yeah, advisors.
And quite frankly, the only reason I even have a master's degree is because I think they just said, we will just put our heads down and we will drag you through this process. So I'm very appreciative of that and so many other aspects of our friendship, Betsy.
Well, that's actually not true, Dana. You would have done this. You know, might have taken a little while because you just you pushed back harder than most people on figuring out a topic and things, but once you got it, you got it. It was fabulous.
Well, I actually really am grateful to have a master's degree, whether it has mattered in my career or not. I like having it, so I'm glad to have had that opportunity to work with both of you. But we invited Betsy on because I was thinking about this, and I've been so clear about this, but I really grew up in a Candyland household of, I mean, nobody even took cough syrup in my immediate or kind of extended family because there might be alcohol in it. And so I did not know anything about drinking or addiction or anything like that. And I think, Betsy, that you might be the first person I remember in my life being very open about having been an active drinker and making a very dramatic decision at a really early age in your life that was not going to be a path you were going to continue on. And I remember the first time I heard you talk about it, we were standing in the kitchen of the house that you and Kevin rented, and a number of other faculty were there, and you said, oh, I know, you were serving tiramisu, and you always put alcohol in your tiramisu, and you were talking about, you know, I don't eat this because I don't drink, and you said it so casually. And I remember thinking, wait, what? And when it dawned on me that this was just a piece of your life that A, you were open about, and B, had not ruined you, it really was an important moment of learning for me because I just never had thought about it before. So A, thanks for being always so open and casual. I mean, you're open and casual about most things in your life, but that was an important moment for me as just a human being. And this was way before I knew Maz. But can you talk just a little bit about your journey to making the decision to go from being an alcoholic to not being an alcoholic?
Yeah, well, so you know, in the parlance, I'm still an alcoholic. I'm just not a drinking one, right? And I think that's a really important part for me to remember all the time is how close that is, and that it's just, you know, one drink away, really. So that's a really important piece. I think for me, I'm really lucky actually that I came from a family where there were addicts and drinkers, because that enabled me to see people in recovery, right? It enabled me to see people who had real challenges in their lives, made terrible choices when they were drinking, to go from that to be not drinking and having really good lives. And so in some ways that piece makes it easier, and it also makes it easier to be open about it, because you really have people around you for whom that has been part of their journey from very early on. I had a number of people in my family who quit drinking as teens before I did. And so I think that was actually a really important piece, to have those models in my life of people who had quit drinking, as well as to have people in my life who I love dearly who didn't quit drinking for a bit longer, and to know that being open about my not drinking was both a thorn to them sometimes, but also maybe a step for them on their road to recovery as well. So yeah.
So you were young when you stopped drinking.
Yeah, so I think I quit drinking. I mean, I'd have to do the math on this again, but Katie was 2. It was right before her first or her second birthday.
Okay.
And so I would have been about 20. So before I could legally drink, actually, which is another interesting piece of that story, right? But I really had a moment when I realized I could either be a good parent or I could drink. And, I'd already sort of made that decision earlier when I decided I could either drive or I could drink, and I quit driving. Right. Right. So I made a whole bunch of life choices to enable my drinking, but it wasn't until I had that sweet baby that I was able to say, boy, this is not a choice that I'm able to make for my drinking. And it wasn't just to be a mother, a parent, but to be a good parent and an involved parent. And so that was a very, it actually, once it became clear to me that that was what the choice was in my life, I think that that's what made it an easier choice to quit drinking.
Sure.
Clearly, driving and going to college and all of these other things had not mattered enough to help me quit drinking.
Well, I think, that's so interesting, because I think the takeaway that I can kind of glean from all these conversations is that that tipping point or that moment of decision is so individual for every person. The experience of addiction might have lots and lots of commonalities,
Right.
but that moment of, all right, this is where I'm going to make a different choice.
Right.
Is so unique to every person and their circumstances.
Right. Yeah, I literally had a morning where I was so sick and hungover that I just really couldn't, like, do anything that was reasonable with my child. And that wasn't good, right? And I didn't, and you also sort of have this understanding that you would not, like, people who are healthy wouldn't do this to themselves more than once, right?
Yeah.
That, like, normal people might get drunk once and have a hangover, and their response would be, oh, I'm never doing that, right? Like, that's what a healthy person would do. It's like you burn your hand on the hot stove and you're like, oh, I'm staying away from that thing while it's hot, right? And so I think that it really took a while for me to think, this really isn't normal to do this to myself and to have to feel that way more than once in your whole life.
That's very interesting, because I've got a vague memory of listening to other people say similar things than you just did. Oh, I can't drink whiskey anymore because it's psycho juice. And I'm sitting there quietly thinking, well, I don't drink enough of it to get that bad, so I'm okay.
Right, absolutely, right.
So,
And I do think that is going to change people's path, Maz, right? Because if you're able to manage that incrementally, you can get to a really different place, maybe in terms of your own health, than you could if you just make yourself sick as a dog, right?
you know, it was just weird that it was, well, I didn't do that, so I should be okay. And I was trying to, I think I may have been for years trying to justify the fact that I drank too much even then. But then when I actually really honestly became an alcoholic, I think it was, I got used to denying things. I was in total denial.
Yeah, I do think that's certainly part of it. And I think you also often spend your time with people for whom that behavior is normalized as well.
Yeah.
And there are always people in your crowd who are worse off than you are, right? And so it's very easy. And you keep those people around for a really specific reason, right? When you're a drunk, because boy, you know, who would tolerate that in their friends otherwise? You wouldn't very much tolerate the, you know, people throwing up on you, people throwing up in your car, people, you know, all of those kinds of things. And you keep those folks around because it's like, oh yeah, but I'm doing fine. Look at that, you
Yeah,
know.
that leads into the problem that a couple of people we've had um, on this show have said the same thing I did. When you go out, you don't drink because you want to seem you're in control, because you want to get home to be safe to drink the amount that you want to drink.
Right.
So that's what
Yeah.
I mean. When I used to go out, part of me was happy because I wasn't drinking, but I was looking forward to going home to have a drink on my own terms.
Right.
I don't know if that's worse or better, you know.
Well, I think some of it could be age related as well. I mean, I think when you're young, if you have a propensity to drink, whether it becomes a problem or it's just a phase of your life, it's much more acceptable to go out and be drunk as a 21-year-old than it is to be drunk as a 41-year-old.
That is, I think that's true. I do think that when you're a young woman, though, it's so dangerous, and you just don't even, I don't even know how to think about that, right? And the number of really dangerous situations that I found myself in, or that I put myself in, or that yeah, and you know, times when I was a blackout drunk and I don't know what happened, right? Probably nothing good, but I don't know. I don't remember. That's probably okay.
Yeah, it's you know, one thing that I really try to do on this, because a number of our pretty consistent viewers, um, I think, are not in some stage of recovery because they don't need to be. So I really, the surprising thing to me through all of this learning with Maz and all these conversations has been how relatable so much of what addicts say is to someone who's not an addict. You just have to replace the word alcohol or alcoholic or alcoholism or those kinds of things. But, you know, if I think back to my young self, so the dangerous situations that I allowed myself to get into or found myself in were never alcohol induced, but they were no less dangerous. I mean,
Right.
being conscious, I suppose, gave me some more control over my ability to fight something off if I needed to, someone off, or those kinds of things. But boy, part of I think the great fear of alcohol consumption and young people is that they are so often in dangerous situations
Right.
because they're exploring the world.
'Cause yeah, yeah, and they're young and
Yeah.
foolish. And I remember saying to my own kids, look, you have a parent who is an alcoholic. If you ever get drunk and then do that twice, you're going to treatment, right? You don't make this choice twice. This is like, and I do think it's super interesting because neither of my kids drink, who are adults, right? And I hope the younger ones don't either. But I don't think they do. And in fact, they're pretty negative about, drinking, smoke. I mean, they have very strong feelings. They're athletes about what they put into their body. But my two older kids just, don't. So,
Well, I think even in Quinn's case, so Quinn is not Maz's biological child, but certainly has, grew up with Maz.
right.
And Quinn does drink some, but he and I talk a lot about just keeping a very present watch on it, because I think if I learned anything from Maz, it's that Maz did not set out to become an alcoholic.
Oh, of
And I
course
don't think
not.
anybody really does. And,
Right.
and the process was long and slow, and there is no moment where we can identify as, oh, that's when the drinking really
Yeah,
became problematic.
Out of hand. Yeah.
Yeah, I try to work it out, but I can't. I really don't know. But one of the things that always keeps me going is the counselor that Dana and I had to go and see when I was finishing off treatment said to me, "You're lucky." And I looked at him and going, how? Well,
Right.
I kind of was lucky because Dana was still sitting next to me. He said, "You are a late onset alcoholic." And I went, this is going to be interesting. And what he said was brilliant. He said, "You're in your 40s, you're 47. You've got all that life experience to remember when you didn't drink too much, to remember what it was like." He said, "It's way tougher as a teenager to keep going with that knowledge." And I thought, well, that is brilliant. And I started thinking the way he did. And that's one of the many things that helped me. I
Yeah.
remember college. I remember being able to say, "Oh, not for me. I've had enough." All
Yeah.
I went to college for 9 years. The heavy drinking years for most people, I knew when to stop then. So I thought, well, if I knew that, I should remember that, and it's helped keep me going.
Yeah.
I,
Absolutely.
I do think it's interesting to have an adult self to go back to.
Right. Absolutely. To know who you are.
Yeah.
Right. And to have a fully formed sense of who you are. And honestly, Maz, I like what you said, that you were lucky to have Dana still sitting there with you, right? That's the other way. And you're lucky to be alive, right? I mean, all of those things, like, and I think those can sustain you for the first, months of sobriety, and the first year of sobriety is like, oh my God, but for the grace of God, right? But I do think that long term, there's those other, then it's like, oh, well, I did I can quit. And honestly, when I first quit, I didn't go to treatment, right? I went to AA, but I didn't go to treatment. And I do think that I always had in the back of my mind, yeah, but if anything bad happens, I really could get drunk because I know how to quit now, right? I mean, the stories you tell yourself are insane. And if you say them out loud to other people, they look at you cross-eyed like, what are you talking about, right? And I don't just mean people in the recovery community. I mean, like, you say that to anybody and they're going to say, wow, that's crazy thinking, right? And I when I was gosh, I guess it would have been about 1989, my first cousin was murdered. And it was really a really pretty awful time for me. And I remember that I spent so much time trying not to be drunk that I don't think I even was able to grieve at the time, right? I mean, it was just, and that was when I knew that I really needed to, like, go back to meetings. I really needed to, try to figure out what was going on in myself. So, I mean, it's a long process. It's not like one and done and you're okay, right? And for many people, I mean, some people, it's just like they have a moment, I'm never drinking again. They don't ever drink again. they get healthy, whatever, that's fabulous. But boy, that's not what it was like for me. And I really had moments where there was a much stronger, um, I had to really think about it much more carefully. And it had to be front of mind rather than back of mind.
I think another thing I've so appreciated about these conversations is just the complexity of choosing to be a person in recovery, regardless how much time or regardless of the active or passive struggle.
Right.
You know what I mean? To think about something truly horrific happening in your life, well, it isn't just a given that because you've got decades of sobriety under your belt, you would just continue to stay sober. So it's that constant choosing of this path that I think is so admirable, with everyone that we've talked to. Because for those of us who don't have to I don't have to wake up every day and really choose anything. I don't have to choose to be happy. I don't have to choose to stay sober. I just kind of get up and do my day. And it would be so easy to think that A, everybody's life is like that, and it's not. Or B, that I don't need to be in a place of really pretty present gratitude for the ease of that. Because I've had some pretty hefty dips in my life. And at no point in any of them have I thought, you know what would fix this? Alcohol.
Yeah.
I've just not thought that because I am the person who can tell you the time I got accidentally incredibly drunk and remember thinking, No, not again. This happened to you once.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I know what I was wearing. I know where I can tell you everything about that night. That will never happen to me again, I hope,
Yeah.
because I was so out of control. And for me, there's nothing worse than
Yeah.
to not be in control. And I just thought, why would I choose this? This is a choice. So,
Right.
for me to be reminded, not at the expense of all these fabulous people in my life who are addicts on various stages of the journey, but just to be present in my own life. I got my own struggles, my own stuff
Right.
I'm working through,
Right.
but it's not that. And I have to be consciously grateful of that.
Yeah, it's that's an interesting thing, Dana. I think that notion that maybe we all need some kind of a 10-step program to just help us remember to be grateful, to remember to um gosh, to remember to say I'm sorry for the people to the people we have harmed in ways large or small, right? I mean, that might be the hardest step in working your program, and it has reshaped my life. I can't um I think that notion of control for alcoholics is really important, and just always feeling in control of the situation, right? And so saying I'm sorry is really admitting to a lack of control in kind of a huge way. And this may not be true for everybody, but it reshaped my ability to do almost everything, to parent, to I'm in a administrative role at work now. All of the things I do, I have to say I messed up. I'm sorry, like on a daily basis, right? And and to be really aware of those things, as well as to try to be aware of the times that I'm just grateful for the beautiful day. And I'm not saying I'm able to do that every day, but I do think that 12-step program has helped me be aware of those moments when it is absolutely essential to like apologize right now. I have harmed you. I am so sorry. And to be able to say that from the heart, right? That it yeah. So
I agree. I have said, and I know this sounds insane, but I have some envy of Maz's community through his AA meetings and the little bit that I know of it, and having learned about the 12 steps and all of that, it's the most incredible form of non-judgmental, supportive, invested people in your path. I mean, we would all be better people if we had a network of people who were bungling along the journey with us, some days doing it better than us and some days doing it less well than us, so that we have a conscious understanding of our place on this path. Because it's not boy, again, if you replace the word alcohol or anything related to it, we're all struggling with something.
Yeah, I agree. And, so I don't want to get too political here, but late capitalism is kind of an addiction in itself that we might need to be able to step away from. And so maybe, that should be our next work, to develop some kind of a 12-step program to get us through late capitalism and back on a path toward a more spiritual kind of interaction with people in the world. I don't know, but
I think we do know, and I think it's a great idea. And I think in your spare time, you should perhaps spearhead that.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, talk about someone who made a bold choice. We elected the current man in the White House and you moved to Canada.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends who doesn't just say, I'm going north. You did it.
Yeah. That's very funny, because I was sitting on the sofa the night of the election when I sent that application off, and I'm really glad I did. I'm really delighted to be here now. But it is also interesting, because one of the things you learn in through a 12-step program like AA or NA is just that there isn't a geographic cure for what's ailing you, that no matter where you go, there you are, right? And so I do think that there are wonderful things about being here, but you still have to be you in the place that you are, right? And figure out how to do that effectively.
We are a global community now, and so you don't operate in an isolated bubble. And one of the really interesting things I have learned from you in this phase of our friendship is just that Canada's not perfect either.
Yeah, that's right. It's facing many of the same challenges, right? We are settler colonialist society living on stolen land. I think there are many challenges here. I think Canada is trying to realize some of that in ways that are some of the ways that are really that really seem worth our time and energy, right? That really trying to do the hard work of anti-racism is happening on a national level. Yeah, so it's good.
Well, hopefully that will have the Republican trickle down effect. It'll trickle north to the south and have a greater effect on all of us who live south of that border, because Lord knows we need it. Yeah. Betsy, we have been doing this week, so I'm going to invite you to join us in this. I don't know if you know this game, Vertellus.
Oh, no.
It's a really interesting game. I ordered it last year, and it's just a conversation game. So all this week we have been asking each other a question. And so here's the question for today. The past year, in retrospect, what was one of your best decisions? And
wow. To give up pants with waistbands. I I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
YouTube.
It is. That's a really hard question, because I do feel like this year has been a little bit out of control in terms of not being like the choices we want to make, we don't have control of exactly anymore. I can't just say, oh, I want to go into work today. I would have to call my boss. Security would have to let me in, right? There's just the, where I am right now, we're completely locked down. So a lot of choices are out of my control. I would say that one of the things that I have tried to do differently this year is communicate better with people around me.
Mm.
And I know this sounds crazy because I have teenagers at home, but every day I try to make sure I tell each of them that I love them at least once during the day, and they roll their eyes, and you know how teenagers react to that, but mostly they humor me in it.
Yep.
And I'm trying to do the same thing at work, which doesn't always, I do have some colleagues who I know if I told them I loved them, they would be very concerned for my mental health and well-being. But I'm trying to find other ways of just letting the people around me know how much I value them and how much they've meant to me this year. And so that will also be you and Maz. I really love you guys. And
Love you too.
following your journey has been really amazing to me. So yeah, so I guess that's the thing that I have, that I've tried to do. I do it imperfectly, but it has been a change, I would say that.
But what an important decision to make, actually, because I really have always, because of my mom, has operated this way too. But this notion of, if you see something that's delightful, tell the person who has delighted you. You know, so if a woman walks into a public bathroom and I'm in there and she's got on great lipstick, I'm absolutely going to tell her lipstick is great. And I will say, you know, things have shifted a bit around Me Too and all of that. So you sort of have to think through how effusive you are about physical praise. But all of those moments where you think something positive and think, well, I shouldn't say anything. Yes, you should, because most of us are going through the world filled with some level of self-loathing and sure that we look terrible, that we are terrible, and that everybody's going to figure it out. I've never had someone pay me a compliment that wasn't like a creepy cat call that I have thought, well, I really resent that.
Right.
If it's been non-sexual, I've always appreciated it from men or women.
Right.
So I think it's a really amazing thing to make that conscious decision to just say, if I think something positive, or if I want you to know that you've mattered to me, I'm going to tell you. I mean, lucky for you and poor Kevin, I feel like you both know how much you've mattered to me, so I don't need to go on and on about it. But I will just say to people who don't know, Betsy's husband, Kevin, is such a spectacular human being, but he's Canadian born. And so I think when Kevin first met me and I cried over all kinds of weird things, he didn't quite know what to do with me. But I feel like Kevin in these 25 years has come a long, long way in his evolution of emotions.
I would say that's very true. He certainly is at a different place, you know, and I think that, boy, God, having a lot of teenagers really puts you on a different emotional scale. I used to think that 3 toddlers were the hardest thing I would ever have to do. And I was so wrong. So very wrong.
I used to say that too. I mean, even though Betsy and Kevin have a son, Griffin, who's a good friend of Quinn's. And so even though they were only children, basically, as little boys, I remember thinking those were the most important years and the most invested years. And I agree with you. I found Quinn's teenage years to be much more important in terms of my availability to him and my ability to just hang with whatever emotional roller coaster he was on. And he was on a pretty flat ride most of the time, but even still,
Yeah.
you know, those teenage years are not for the faint of heart, either to go through or to watch.
Yeah, we've got a 13-year-old daughter who just kind of keeps us moving every day. You know, she's quite the person.
Her own way. I mean, I feel like She's an extraordinary 13-year-old.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
Dr. Mary, do you want to answer the question quickly?
Yeah.
What was one of your best decisions?
This year.
Yes.
I've made so many.
I love that. And I love that you feel like you, you know, have
Well,
that,
let me tell you.
Like a
yeah, that you were able to, right?
My
That they
favorite-
weren't all being made for you. That's fabulous.
I would say, actually, having said that, this better be good. My favorite best decision this year would be when you said to me, well, we're locked down. Let's redecorate 2 bedrooms and get rid of some old carpet and just rejuve the inside of the house. And we did, and it was fantastic. And I just said, yes, let's do it. I didn't say, I feel like I'm up to my eyeballs in work because I've got to go online. I just thought, no, sod it. Let's just do this. It'll be fun. And we did it.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was fun. Yes.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I don't need to paint again for a while,
No.
but yes, it was good. And I would say my best decision was, this is sort of trivial, but to get back to pretty serious bread baking.
Oh.
So, you know, I mean, I didn't have to make any grand dramatic shifts, and also to figure out how to engage with our family in a virtual way and
Oh,
to still make
yes.
sure that those relationships felt meaningful and like we were investing in each other. I mean, it's been hard to have Quinn 2,000 miles away, and to be worried about him and to know how little access or control I have if something were to go wrong. Bearing in mind, he is almost 25 years old. So you have to let that go at some point anyway. But it has been, you know, trying to navigate not letting that just consume me.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I think we definitely have had to do some of that too. And just we have weekly Zoom meetings with the whole family, right? And it's really nice. We're probably chatting more than we did before.
I think that too. Yeah. And more intentionally, in part because there's a little more time.
Right.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah. Well, Betsy, this has been delightful.
It
We
absolutely
so
has.
appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And, you know, as I said, you know how crazy about you I am. Pretty much everything I know about cooking, I know from you, and everything I know about academia, I know from you. And a lot of what I know about parenting, I know from you, and so many other things. So thanks for giving us this last day of the year time.
Yeah, it's always kind of interesting to be able to talk about drinking and addiction on this day too. So, you know, I think I remember when people used to around me call it amateur night. And so they would do have Maz's, you know, strategy of staying home so that they didn't have to be out with those folks. So it's an interesting,
Yeah, that's
night,
absolutely
for sure. And I bet there are more people who maybe quit drinking on the 1st, whether they do it for good or not, than any other day. And so, you know, let's prayers to them
Yeah.
on
Absolutely.
this night.
Absolutely. Betsy, thanks so much.
Thanks,
Everybody
Betsy.
else,
Fantastic
Happy
to
New
see you.
Year. Take that point to heart. You don't have to drink to blackout point tonight. You could choose to make some of our fun non-alcoholic drinks tonight and wake up tomorrow morning and be really clear-headed and safe. Or you could choose to drink just a little bit and be smart about it. So
It is a work day. So
not many, but happy New Year's Eve. Betsy, thanks so
thanks,
much.
Betsy.
We
Thank
will talk to you
you.
soon.
Take
Bye.
care.